I think we could start my journey at Indiana State. I think that's pretty much where it all started.
Okay.
I went to Indiana State, both undergrad and graduate. I got my MBA from there as well in organizational development. My undergrad was in communications and marketing. And so Africa wasn't really on the forefront. I was born and raised in the US. I was born in Chicago, but we had traveled back and forth to Nigeria for like holidays, Christmas, December, a few summers. And, outside of the normal threat that, if you don't shape up, we are going to ship you back to Nigeria.
African parents, yes.
African, you are hanging with the wrong crowd. I will send you back. I will send you to Africa. So aside from the proverbial threats, I never really had living in Africa, in the forefront of my mind. And so after I got my MBA, I started working for GE, oil and gas. And I worked with GE Power in Atlanta first. And then the position became available for me to move to Africa. At the time, I didn't know it was going to be Nigeria, but they, had it all set up for me. Adeola, your background, your parents are Nigerian, right? Yeah. We think you would be a shoo-in for this position. And originally, it was like in Port Harcourt. And, it was on a base, you know what I mean? Like you're staying there with like expatriates, but they're all old. So they're like 50, 60. And I mean, I'm fresh out of, graduate school. I'm still young, vibrant. I'm like, man, this is not what I thought it was going to be. Right. And, wasn't in the city. And then at the time, unfortunately for the area, there was a lot of kidnapping. Kidnapping was a bit prevalent. And so it just wasn't really my vibe, and I was like, nah, I'm not going to. And then a good big brother of mine, whom I won't mention by name, he gave me an opportunity to transition still within GE in Lagos. And coming to Lagos, it was like, whoa, it was like New York. I was like, man, it's like 25 million people. It was rocking. I was like, yeah, this is more like it. This is the Africa I've been wanting to see. And, I worked my way up the ranks. And then I got another opportunity. I stumbled on it, literally, to be the head of trading operations for a company called Fulawio Energy Limited, which at the time was the largest joint venture in Nigeria. We were doing about 52% of the gasoline that was coming into Nigeria. So I was responsible for managing the operations of the cargo coming in, the discharge, the retailing of the sales. And that was really my real introduction into the oil and gas downstream, into trade. And at the time, the partner was Glencore. Mr. Fulawio had a joint venture with Glencore. They were a really, really big UK-based trading outfit in Nigeria. And that was really like my eye-opening experience into really being in Nigeria and just seeing how much potential was. I was completely unaware of the industry. That's where I kind of got my trading experience from, just really my introduction to the industry. I hadn't really done anything like that prior. And all my previous experiences have been, in the US, just in regular, corporate America positions. I was doing like HR work, human resources management. So, but nothing into the oil and gas space. And I met a lot of really, really good people. Till this day, I would always have to attribute my success to Mr. Tunde Fulawio. Without him, I wouldn't have really been in Nigeria. I wouldn't have met, I wouldn't be on the current trajectory that I am. So I did that for about 3 years. And then I decided to dabble in consulting. I had met so many different companies that really were interested in working with me and me working for them. I kind of got introduced into crude, which is, the upstream oil and gas sector, crude oil. I worked with several different companies, far too many to mention all by name. I don't want to leave anyone off, but I mean, even state oil companies outside of Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation. I worked with the state oil company of Azerbaijan, SOCAR. I've done a lot of consulting work for them and a lot of other positions. But again, I wouldn't have been able to do any of that if it hadn't been for my experience with Mr. Fulawio. It was really eye-opening introduction into several different aspects and areas of the business. Totally. And after that, I started consulting, full time. I started my own consultancy company called Petrol Afrique. And it's basically, a consulting company for companies that want to do business in Africa, particularly West Africa, which is where most of my experience lies, and specifically in Nigeria. So a lot of companies contact me, whether they're downstream petroleum traders like gasoline or diesel, which is automotive gas oil, or some NAFTA trades, or they want to just know what is the general consumption. So they contact me. And then I got a request, funny enough, from an individual that was into LPG. And I was like, oh, I know what LPG is, which is liquefied petroleum gas, but I'm not really familiar with it. So it kind of stumped me. You know, oh, they said that you could do anything. I was like, yeah, I could. You know, and of course, you know, being young, ambitious businessman, I'm not going to turn it down. I'm like, yeah, sure. LPG is it? Yes, don't worry. LPG, yes. And so it was that contract that actually introduced me into the market, and I found out how grossly underserved, you know, LPG was, and how much potential it had. And I was guys like, so are you planning on coming into Nigeria? Where he's like, no, it's a bit dicey. And he mentioned all of the concerns that he had. I was like, man, that's for you because you're in Europe. I'm on the ground.
Right.
I can do this. And so basically that was the start. That was the catalyst into getting into LPG. And so I decided to partner with a few good friends of mine that I've known in the industry for quite some time. We put our little stones and monies together and said, you know what? Let's build this thing. And so currently we are set up at in the Lekki Free Trade Zone area. We're doing, we have a 20-ton tank and a 10-ton tank, and we're doing about 40 tons a week. You know, it's really grown.
Awesome.
It's not really anything to write home about just yet, but you can see it. We're on the cusp of building something great. And I believe our vision overall is to have one station in every city in Nigeria, you know, because LPG really is the future. It's unfortunate that it's a bit pricey at the moment. The pricing has been one of the key components and key issues to getting people to come on board, you know, moving from dirty fuels like, you know, charcoal and wood, you know, and kerosene, you know, those are still very prevalent. And, you know, to the typical African person, the African woman cooking, the cooking for the drivers and the people that are on the road, the roadside cooks, you know, they're going to go with the cheapest product available, whether it's charcoal. They don't necessarily care about inhaling the carcinogens and harmful substances that may cause cancer. You know, it's about the bottom line. You know, they have to send their children to school, you know, so these are all things that we're really working hard to try to make it affordable, make it more affordable, and try to really lobby to see how we can get, you know, the LPG market to where it should be.
Yeah. And actually, that's how you and I met at LPG Week in Dubai.
Yeah.
I remember I was sitting on the panel, and then, you know, I'm like, this guy with a Nigerian name with a deep American accent asks very poignant questions about how to increase LPG access. And I was like, I got to have you on the podcast. I think your story is super interesting. I think there's a lot of people in the US, and they could be, you know, African, like, but also just African American. And I think Ghana has seen this quite a bit. And because of the whole return push. And
free citizenship and, you know, really helping out. I think all African nations take a page, you know, hats off to Ghana.
For what I agree.
Really making strides to coming back to Africa, you know, a theme and actually a reality for so many people. There are quite a few Americans over there that I've met personally that literally they just abandoned everything that they had and living full time in Ghana.
Yeah.
You know,
and I think that set of people have a lot to offer the continent. I mean, if we take you as a use case, like you've come in and, you know, you're building an actual business that's impacting lives. I mean, not to say that there are not challenges within that, but I just think for Africa's next phase, you know, we really need to think strategically about how to engage our own, who may be in the diaspora, to really come back home and build the continent. So there's a couple interesting themes in your story that I want to explore a little further. I think one is, you know, a very common through line with people who come back is that they come back through their US employer. And I think that's a really easy transition to come back in that way. I always call it a soft landing. And so, what was your calculus like when you got approached to go to Nigeria, having grown up with this thing from your parents, like, we'll ship you off to Niger?
Yeah.
How was that decision for you?
My parents had planted the seed, I believe, and when they realized that the threat was actually something that I was really counting on, they changed it at the last minute. Oh, no. If he gets to Nigeria, he will end up hanging with the riffraffs in Nigeria, where we can still keep an eye on him. And then, as I got older, as I matured, obviously, Nigeria became a place of revelation, really. Like, I think that this is things that I share, when I'm at the barbershop, because when we were growing up in the diaspora, right? I was born and raised in Chicago. The first time I ever went to Nigeria in my entire life was in 1995. So it was really an eye-opener. And from 1995 to 2003 was just when I came to Nigeria again. I think I went in 99. But so 95, 99, and then 2003, there were so many dynamic, fast changes within that time period. And, when you're approached for something like that, you never really know what to really say. And obviously that comes with a certain amount of pressure. Like, if I say no, am I still going to have a job?
Right.
It was like, we really want you to go here. And if you can't, that's it. Right. So, but there's no place like home. I can't stress that enough. I think that, growing up then in America at a young age, the images we had of Africa weren't positive. You know what I mean? And then my experiences, I wouldn't say that they weren't positive, but they weren't anything that were influential to the point where I wanted to change and like live here. When we go on a vacation, of course you're seeing the best. They're being nice, but then you pass through some places and you're like, I don't think I can stay here. But that is also here in America. It's everywhere. You know what I mean? Those elements, the different elements of life, are always going to be in every city, in every country that you may be able to travel to. And so I think in the 2000s, starting particularly with music, you would see that there was this transition. A lot of people came back home, like D'banj. I remember hearing him for the first time, first came to Nigeria. It made it cool. It gave us this sense of identity. So I really particularly look at, like, from 2002 till about 2009 was like a renaissance here, where people were coming back, and it was cool, because, growing to school, I used to hate attendance. When they would do like a roll call, they were like, Carrie Adams here, John Adams here.
I did.
They called me Adeola Adediran. I was like, I'm not being close. And I would always jump ahead when they're like, Carrie Adams. I know I'm right after Adams. Yeah.
Just so they wouldn't mess up your name in Nigeria. You're with your people.
Exactly. But when you're growing up, it wasn't cool to be African. But now, as you see, you can hear Wizkid and you hear I'm a Piano on the radio now. Like in America, like, we're hot. It's cool to be African. And so I think that being back, it gives you this sense of not only belonging, not only identity, but a real sense of contribution. Whereas when you're in Europe, or if you're in America, you're just, you know what I mean? Like, your contribution may go unnoticed. But when you're in Africa and you're in the heart, even though you might not be noticed on a global scale, or it's not like the offices of the presidents here are calling you, but the little person in the neighborhood that you give a discount to, like, God bless you. And you can feel you. You know what I mean? Like they know you're chief. You have all these like area guys that hype you up, that make you feel good.
Boss, as we say in Kenya.
Yeah. After you, now you. After you. So it's that love, that camaraderie. You can't really get it anywhere else. But if I would have known this from the beginning, like right after school, I wouldn't have wasted like 2 or 3 years in America. I would have went straight to Africa. You know what I mean? Knowing what I know.
Right, absolutely.
Earlier, I always think about, man, I would have been here, and here if I just earlier. But it's a learning process, and I think that it's easier now. It's easier for people to even have Africa on the forefront of their minds, that it's a viable option. You can do it. You know what I mean? I'm a witness.
Man, you took me, when you mentioned D'banj, you took me back to Philly clubs were playing D'banj when I was in business school, and we were like, this is insane. Like, we couldn't believe it. You know,
because at least I grew up with the old music, like it,
totally.
it was English. It wasn't, it wasn't really hip, especially if you didn't speak the language. And like one track, like 24 minutes long, But when the band seen Two-Face with African Queen, we were in the movies. Monique did a movie. Mentioned Philly. Monique did a movie called Fat Girls. And then, African Queen was on there. You are my African Queen. Like, that was part of the Renaissance. It was like, yo, Africa's on the map.
Yeah.
That song Yahoo, you know what I mean? Like, all those little jams that were coming around at that time. And then also your girl too from South Africa, Brenda, she's late. I forgot her name. It was all around
that Fassi or no?
Fassi.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
a CD back when we used to really have CD players. I had
yeah.
all the African hits. So around that time it was just a very vibrant time. Really and then we had our Wilo Lungu Ba, Carol, like that. It was just a rocking time.
It really was.
Just cool to be African.
Yeah. Wow.